This is a short statement first because I'm the chairman of Hillhead Residents Association and I'm working with the Hill Common Residents Association and Leon Solent. And all three of us are strongly opposed to the IFA2 interconnector, and we have applied to get the National Grids application called in by the Secretary of State. If we're successful, that would mean it was held at a proper planning inquiry before a professional and independent planning inspector, which I think would answer your question. Our request has the support of our MP, the leader of Gosport Borough Council and the councillors for Stubbington, Peel Common and Leon Solent. National Grid plc are not the neutral providers of the UK's electrical wiring. They're a profit-seeking multinational which has no responsibility for security of supply and gets paid more the bigger the grid is, hence their enthusiasm for more and more interconnectors. The IFA2 interconnector will only provide power as long as France has a surplus. At the moment, France has 58 nuclear reactors and are on average over 30 years old, and France, like the UK, is having huge problems replacing them. The cost of French power is set to rise sharply, so they won't make this 2% saving we're talking about. Well, they might for a short period. Interconnectors are just another unreliable and expensive source of power that will keep UK electricity costs sky high, as they are now, and continue to be very damaging to UK industry. It would be far, far better to build a replacement 2,000 megawatt combined cycle gas turbine power station under full UK control at Fawley. The local reasons we don't want the interconnector here, it would be a huge eyesore of a building right at the narrowest point of the strategic gap. Fareham Council were asking us only recently to oppose the application to build 1,100 houses south of Fareham precisely because they were in the strategic gap. The difference here is that Fareham will receive a premium payment and rent for the interconnector, so we're being told it's okay. The interconnector
you
building...
mind getting along to your questions?
Yes, I am, very sorry.
There are a lot of people
The interconnector building will be noisy, emitting a 90 decibel hum at a source running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It will be only 240 metres from the houses at the bottom of Newgate Lane, and with the southwest wind, the noise will greatly affect Peel Common. On a calm night, we'll hear it over a wider area all round the airfield, but why should we? There'll be 8 large power cables buried only 1 metre down. The 2 DC cables from France carrying 390,000 or 320,000 volts will go from the Solent right across the mud flats and the beach, underneath the beach huts, across Monks Hill car park, and then just east of Crofton Avenue, across the Stubbington Road to the airfield running just to the west of the runway 23, and then to the interconnector building. The 6 AC cables, each carrying 400,000 volts, will go the same route. They will also be buried 1 metre down and go out around the sea, under the sea and mud flats to Chilling. What effect will these have on aircraft compasses, parked cars, beach huts, or people sunbathing on the beach? Would the project recommend sunbathing on top of the cables? How far apart will the cables be? How many warning signs will there have to be? What effect will the cables have on the sensitive electronic aviation work, on the defence and aviation businesses that are being encouraged to come to the Solent Enterprise Zone at Daedalus, or will the electronic environment being created frighten them off? Will the IFA2 converter station, which is among the heaviest electrical engineering anywhere in UK, cause no interference to radio, radar, TV or communication? Curiously, the 2,779 pages of the application are silent on much of that. Finally, the 2 alternative sites. The first at Chilling, just beyond the Bromwich Pond. That's the site preferred by the IFA2 project, but the leader of Hampshire County Council turned down flat. It wasn't properly investigated. The other is Fawley, and it was sold to Fawley Waterside Limited. Initially, when I rang them, they were open to offers, but they've decided no, they didn't want to do that. It's very easy to use Fawley because they just run the cables underneath to Chilling, and Fawley is much nearer to the Chilling substation than Davis. So they don't want IFA2 here.
Thank you very much indeed, Bill. I can tell you that every single one of those questions I have posed, and so have local councillors posed, and we expect to have satisfactory answers to all of them And if we don't, then even if the planning committee decides to give a planning consent as landlord, and I made it very, very clear that we will not allow anything to be erected at Daedalus which would have an adverse impact on the running of the runway. And that is simple. We didn't take on a runway, spend £1.5 million resurfacing it, to then have something go up which is going to have an adverse effect upon it. Now, hear my words very carefully, an adverse effect, not no effect. Clearly there is going to be some effect. You can't put up a building like that and have no effect. But what we have to have demonstrated as landlord, regardless of the planning consent, is that there is no adverse effect. If I can come back though to your very first part of your point, which was about asking the Secretary of State to call in the planning application. Obviously I totally respect that, and I've done it myself with respect to planning applications in the past. But I did feel that people might find it helpful to know exactly what that means and what it is that the Secretary of State will take into account. I very much doubt the Secretary of State will call it in prior to the planning committee making its decision. And in fact, you asked them to call it in before there was even an application submitted, which is very quick off the starting blocks. But what I imagine what will happen is that the planning committee will make its decision, and then the Secretary of State would decide whether or not to call in that decision, because it would be a bit pointless if the planning committee refused it for the Secretary of State to call in the decision. And precisely what it is that the Secretary of State takes into account, I thought it might be helpful for people to know, so I did get a little note on it, and the examples are that it may conflict with national policies on important matters. It may have significant long-term impact on economic growth and meeting housing needs across a wider area than a single local authority. It could have significant effects beyond their immediate locality. It could give rise to substantial cross-boundary or national controversy. It could raise significant architectural and urban design issues, or may involve the interests of national security or of foreign governments. So those are the things that the Secretary of State would take into account in deciding whether it's Greg Clark as the Secretary of State, whether he wished to call in the planning committee's decision. But I say I think it's unlikely that he would call it in before the planning committee even made the decision, but if he did want to call it in, those are the issues that he would need to be convinced that there was an issue about them.